Hello all. So welcome back to this today's session. So in this session, let's try to understand. Let's have some small recap and let's go ahead and understand what are the things that we can actually learn in this respective session. So coming back to this thing, yes. So in the previous session, we have seen about variable naming rules and we have seen about the data types and what are the different data types, and also we have learned about one very important thing which is known as type of operator. Let me write it like this: type of operator. So in the previous session, we have learned about these three important things. So in this session, let's try to understand about this interaction part. How do we use JavaScript to make it interact with the websites? And also let's try to understand how can we make this type conversions, like converting one data type to another data type. And also let's try to understand what is basic operators that we can work upon it. So without any delay, let's go ahead and let's start learning about this given particular thing. So now coming back to this thing, yeah. So first thing is interaction. We need to clearly understand how alert, prompt, confirm, three important things will actually work. So in order to make them work, one very important thing we need to understand is I am not writing my code here. Let's say if I want to write something known as alert, and if I say hello, as we have already seen how does this alert works in the previous sessions. Now comes to this one very important thing. Like whenever we try to write this alert or any kind of interactive commands or interactive things that we are going to learn in this first part of the video, might not work in our local computer, which is nothing but if I something like node data types .js, you'll see an error. It is clearly mentioning alert is not defined. So one very important thing we need to understand with respect to thing of JavaScript is it is very important thing. Sorry, not this. Bad. One very important thing we need to understand is JS is logic. JS is logic, which is nothing but I just want to clearly mention that uh, people who want to run a Python code in their local system, they need to download something. Like for example, let me go to some given particular website. Let me say I'll say Python. If I want to download Python, I'll simply type Python and I have to go to this python.org. I click on downloads and I'll simply click on this Python and it will get downloaded. This will clearly get downloaded. The Python will be get downloaded. Similarly, it will be happening with different languages. But now coming back to this JavaScript, you don't download the JavaScript language. You don't download the JavaScript package altogether. What you download is you download the environment of JavaScript, which is nothing but in order to make a JavaScript code run on your machine, you download the environment. It can be either Node or Node.js, which Node means Node.js. It can be browser. It can be a very new thing that is getting popularized nowadays. It is known as Bun, a platform or an environment known as Bun.js. So you download the environment, and once the environment download is successfully done in your local computer, then that's it. You just open that environment and run your JavaScript. This is nothing but just write your logic, write your program. And once this environment is actually installed in your computer, then that's it. You just run the logic using this environment. That's what I am doing in my VS Code altogether. You can clearly observe I have written some JavaScript code here. Inside here, I have written some kind of a JavaScript code, and I'm using this command known as node data types.js. So I have already downloaded and installed node environment into my system. After that, I'm having this respect to file. I have written some JavaScript code. I'm using that environment. I'm trying to execute this given particular code. That's what we do in JavaScript. That's why I'm clearly telling whenever you're dealing with JavaScript, it is nothing but just a logic. It is nothing but a program that you write. But to run this program, we need certain kind of an environments. So in the case of JavaScript, we don't download the packages, we don't download the programming language structure, grammatical syntax, semantic rules, compilers, interpreter. No, we just download the in environment, we install the environment, and that's it. That is the difference between a JavaScript language and other language altogether. Now coming back to this one very important thing, as we can clearly observe, whenever we have tried to attempt to run this given particular program where we have this thing known as an alert. It is clearly mentioning alert is not defined, and it is clearly mentioned that object.anonymous. Okay, there is this on this 88th line in the file known as datatypes.js. We have 88th line. In the first column, you can clearly see there is something known as alert. Datatypes.js file, 88th line. It is very important to understand what is the error that we got. We got something known as a reference error. And it is clearly mentioning where the error has happened. Where the error has happened. Right? Now, wait a minute. Yeah. Yes. Now coming back to this given particular thing, one very important thing we need to understand is, as here JavaScript is a mere logic. Based upon the environment, we have few commands working. One very important thing I need to mention. Based on the environment we have, or we run our JavaScript code, we have few things work in JS, work in program. Few things may not work, but that doesn't mean that function or operator is wrong. Because in this respective example, whenever I have written this alert code in VS Code and I'm trying to run the code using Node.js environment, I'm getting an error. But one very important thing, if I take a browser, let me go to the browser. Let me go to the browser. Let me click on this something known as, I'm currently on my browser. I click on this something known as inspect. I go to this console tab and I execute it. Alert. Hi. Execute. Now you can clearly see there is this something known as hi. There is something appearing on the screen which is known as hi. So once we have this alert function with us, and if you try to run in a proper environment, then you'll see the output. If you try to run in a mismatched environment like this, because one very important thing we need to understand is the interaction part that we are going to learn in this first part of the session, the interaction part, alert, prompt, confirm, where these helps us users to interact with the website. So obviously website will be running in the browser, not in the local computers altogether, because website front end will be running on the browser. So these three commands will work in the browser environment, but not in the local environments like bun.js and node.js. You will see a basic errors like this. Basic errors like this. Reference error where it is clearly mentioned alert is not, because for node.js environment, this is completely new. This is completely new. So that's how this entire thing works. So do not think alert is wrong. Alert is right. Even JavaScript is right. But sometimes it also depends upon the environment where you're running your JavaScript code. If you're running your JavaScript code in some other environments altogether, then you might face errors. So if you run your JavaScript code in a specific environment, it gives you the result. That's what I just want to mention. So that's this respective thing which is known as alert. Whenever we say this thing known as an alert, hi, you'll see it is working. Now, until unless I click on this OK, I cannot interact with the browser itself. So it is giving some kind of alert to this web page. So users should first answer it and that should go to the other parts. That is what meant by this respective thing known as an alert. Now coming back to the second important thing which is known as prompt. We have this thing known as a prompt. It is not an AI prompt or prompt engineering, such kind of a prompt. Where one I need to mention this thing. Let me write it here. Prompt. So this prompt has two important, or it accepts two arguments. First one is title. Second one is default. Default. So for example, let's say if I let me run the code. We go to the browser itself. So I'll keep the respective title as are you 18 plus. At this point of time, let's give only one argument. Let's only give one pass, one value to this prompt. Let's run the code. Now it is saying, are you 18 plus? I need to yes. Okay. So if you can clearly observe, whatever text that I am entering here inside this box, clicking OK, that is getting returned. That is getting returned. That is getting returned. So in general, we'll say let result is equal to prompt of, I'll simply mention, are you 18 plus? Now if I say something known as yes, now that yes will be stored inside this variable known as result. Sorry, let me run that code. Okay, let me say console.log result. So one very important thing we need to understand is once we answer this prompt, once we answer the question that is raised by this respective thing known as an prompt, that result will be stored inside this variable. So that's why I'm rerunning this code. Let's say if I say yes, you can clearly see whatever answer that the user has given will be stored inside this simple variable, and we can clearly see that answer. And as we have clearly seen in this thing, the second variable is something in this brackets. I'll come to this bracket, what is meant by brackets in some after some videos altogether. So let me go here. Not VS Code. Sorry. Yeah. If I say let result is equal to prompt, and if I say something known as are you 18 plus, and if I something like I mention yes, and simply result. If I say like this, now if I run the code, clearly mentioned, I have clearly mentioned that second parameter, second argument altogether, which is nothing but here it is mentioned as a string yes. Now let's run the code. Now if you can clearly remember, whenever we have this second thing, a second value, by default you'll see that the value is present here. The value is present here. The value is present here. If you click just OK. Let me rerun the code. So here we have our question, we have our title to be more precise, and we have our by default answer for the title. So if when I enter S, we have this question and we have the answer also here. We have the specific answer here, like the default value that we have kept. Click OK. If someone says, we click clear it off. If I run here in this respect to code, let me cancel. In this respect to code, I don't have any kind of a second parameter already. That's why you can clearly see. Sorry, let me rerun the code. Now, in this given particular code, we don't have the second parameter altogether. Whenever we don't have second parameter, if you run the code, you'll see there is no default value present in the box. I need to manually enter it. Yes. And another important thing is, if we run the prompt and instead of answering this prompt, if we click cancel, that result will be null and will be stored inside this simple variable known as result. That's why whenever I console result, it is storing something known as null. So one very important thing we need to understand is whenever we have something like a prompt, we need to give some answer. If you don't give answer, if you give some answer and click on OK, this result will be stored inside this result. Sorry, this output from this prompt will be stored inside this variable and we have console logged it. And second important thing is it's your choice whether you can go ahead with this thing or not. It's always a good idea to have your default value like this. Click yes. If you are 18 plus, click on OK. Similarly, if you are running the prompt and if you are not 18 plus, click on cancel. So one very important thing we need to understand is once we answer this prompt, then, or I can say, once we answer this, the result that this returns to the user is the data passed by user. Which is nothing but whenever a user provides certain kind of a thing. Let's say, for example, when I am running the code, clearly see I have given the default value as is. If I click on OK, then this entire right hand side value is returning some value known as the user value. User has approved that he is over 18 plus. That result will be given and we are storing inside a variable. Similarly, if you run the code and user doesn't want to answer this thing, he clicked cancel. So now this entire right hand side prompt will return a value known as null and that will be stored inside a result variable and we are logging that given particular result. So whatever user's response for this respective prompt thing will be returned by the prompt, and if you want to store, you can store inside a variable. That's what we are doing it. To be more clear, I repeat once it, which is nothing but whatever user response, that result will be returned by this prompt. For example, what is meant by returning? If I say console.log, if I say 123, whenever I execute this code in the console tab, I'm trying to log, which is nothing but I'm trying to print, or this function is trying to print this 123, which is nothing but, to understand it in a much more high level way, this above function is returning the data to the console tab. That's what this entire thing actually meant. Instead of this, let me take this previous example. This here, whenever we have this prompt, whatever answer user give, that will be returned by this prompt. If you want to store that returned value, you can store like this. If you don't want to store that value, you'll simply say prompt are you 18 plus. That's it. I'll say cancel. This is returned value. If you want to store it in a separate variable, keep like this. If you don't want, just leave it. So that's how prompt actually works. Similarly, we have this third important thing, which is known as confirm. What is this thing? Is if I say, let's say confirm, I'll simply mention something like it's kind of asking questions. So, are you the boss? I can say, are you the boss? If you click OK, it returns a value of Boolean. If I run the code again, if I click on cancel, it returns the value of false. So we have three important things. One is alert, where it helps us to show some kind of an alert message to the users. One is prompt, where it helps us to ask, get the things from the user, get some kind of a data from the user. And we have something known as confirm. So the syntax would be looking like this. We use this to ask questions to the users. These are the two things that we want to understand about. So in order to make users to interact, in order to make people interact with our respective web page, we have these three important things: alert, prompt, and confirm. Confirm is used to ask questions to the user. Prompt is where we want users to enter some data. Alert is we just alert them. See, just you are opening this website, be very careful. You just want to show some kind of an alert thing altogether. That's how this alert thing actually works. So we have three different types of things that are present for us to understand this entire way of making the users interact with each other. That's how this entire thing would be. Now let's go back and let's start understanding about the second part of this aspect of today's video, which is known as type conversions. This is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Let's go ahead and let's try to understand how can we do it. So for that, I'm going back to my thing. Let me close this off. And I hope this is not required anymore. This is not at all required. So let me create a new tab which is known as TypeConversions.js. Right. Yeah. Let me take off all of these respective things. So one very important thing is most of the time, I can say most of the time, operators and functions automatically convert the values given to them to right type, which is example. For example, let's take this example, or let me show this example. Let's go to inspect, let's go to console tab, and let's say um what if I can say, right, sorry, let result is equal to alert of I'll say 1 2 3. Now clearly observe, inside this alert we have given a number data type, now console.log. Let's try to understand what is the thing that after running this alert, what does this alert is actually returning to the user. Run the code. 1 2 3. Okay, nothing. It is returning nothing. So not clear, sorry, it is not clear. Wait. So one very important thing we need to understand is um alert automatically converts any value to a string to show on screen. For example, in the previous thing, I have given this below thing. I simply said alert 1 2 3. So as while writing the code, I have assumed that whatever data that I have given is a number. But alert is one such a interactive function where it converts this 1 2 3 into a string format altogether. So it will convert this thing into like this 1 2 3. It will show 1 2 3 like this, or whatever output that we have shown will be in the format of string, will not be a number. So this is what meant by type conversions. In JavaScript specifically, we observe this type conversions most of the time because due to the operators. So what is meant by operators? Operators are your plus, minus, multiplication, division, your modulo operand. These are known as operators. Where these operators, this type of a given particular data will be converted from number to string, string to boolean, anything that can be happening. So first things first, let's try to understand this thing. String conversion. String conversions. So let's try to understand how can we convert a string data type into other data types altogether. For example, I'll say let value is equal to something like true. I'll simply say console.log type of value. If I simply mention this type of value, if I run the code, node, node, not this thing, node type conversion, because currently we are writing our JavaScript code inside this file. So we want this file to be run inside our node environment. That's what I have written this command. So in the value here, we are storing something known as a Boolean data type. So whenever we want to check what is the data that this value variable is storing, we'll be using this one single thing known as a command, this thing. And we have this thing known as a Boolean. Now, what if we do it like this? Like we want to convert that thing into the string. So I'll simply say value is equal to string of, and I'll simply mention value. Or instead of like this, it might confuse you. I'll say converted value. Whenever you're doing this one important thing, very important thing, so we need to clearly understand fundamental point of how does this thing works. Now here string comparison, actually this is a function given by the JavaScript itself. So we are going to use that thing to convert this boolean, which is stored inside this variable. We want to convert this data, which is stored inside this variable, to a string. That's what it is meant by. Let's have some kind of console log. And now let's have type of converted value. Type of converted value. So let me rerun the code and I can clearly see the first console log output here is boolean. You can clearly see after 8th line, because if you can clearly observe, the code executes from line 1. It executes from left to right. Once the code is ended in the first line, it goes to the second line and left to right, and third line left to right, fourth line left to right, fifth line left to right, sixth line left to right. So the code execution will be in the format. So it hits the 8th line, it executes this line. Once after saying this semicolon, it comes to 9th line and it executes the 9th line. So once after executing the 9th line, because in 8th line we clearly storing boolean value into this variable. That's why in the 9th line we want to print it out. What is the type of it? That's why we got the answer as boolean. The same thing happens with this same thing. In the 12th line we are trying to convert that data that is present in the variable known as value, which is a boolean previously, but we want to convert that thing to string. So we are converting it here. And now in the 13th line you can clearly see whenever we want to check what is the data type that is stored inside this converted value, we have the output as known as string. This is how the string conversions actually happen. Whenever you want, let's say if value is something like a number, if it's of number, while value is 1, 2, 3. Now if I rerun the code, so for this initial value, it would be something known as number. For this, the value would be still string. Let's run the code. You can clearly see the first console log value is number and the second console log value is string. This is how this string conversion actually happens. Now let's right. Now apart from string conversion, we have this thing known as a numeric conversion. Let's have this something like numeric conversion where we want any given particular data type to be converted into numbers. If I have something like this, interesting, this would be a bit interesting. So whenever we want to try to perform a division operation specifically between a string, which is a text, and a number, then we have seen in the previous session that it would result to the value of nan. Let me write it in the comment. Yeah. This would result to the value of 9. But what if we want to convert division? We want to have division between. Let me remove this output. Okay. What if we have two strings and inside strings we have numbers? But still, can we call these two as numbers? No. Can we call these two as strings? No. These two are actually strings. Because inside double quotes, inside single quotes, inside backticks, even if you write a boolean value or any data type value, it will be considered as string. It will be considered as string. So one very important definition I just want to mention. If it is of general to, this is a number. But if it is in the format of like this, or like this, or present within brackets like this, these three are strings. But here if you can clearly observe this two, it doesn't have any kind of a quotations. Then this is number. Then this is number. So now in this given particular case, we have two different strings, but inside the strings we have numbers, only numbers. We don't have something like 6a, 2c. We don't have such kind of things. We have only these things, 6 and 2. Now, what will be this output of this respective thing? So let's run the code and see. Now you can clearly see the output is a number. So the output is number. So one very important thing we need to understand is, because in the starting statement where we have understood, most of the times operators and functions automatically convert the values given to them to the right type. So here, as I have mentioned, division, this symbol is an operator. This alert is a function. This alert is a function. Similarly, here we have a division operator where this division operator is converting into a right type. Because here what exactly happen is, this string 6, this string 2 will be both converted into numbers and then division operation will be occurred. So here the operator will first convert and in 6 and 2 to number, and then perform division and then perform division and then perform division. So once this string values are being converted into numbers, which is nothing but 6 divided by 2, this entire thing will be converted into 6 divided by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. That's what we got the result as 3. So most of the times operators can also actually convert the data to a correct data type altogether. That's what this given particular thing. And one very important thing I need to clearly mention this thing is, I forgot to mention it. Sorry. This division operator, like when division is applied to non-numbers, like the below example, we'll get both the non-numbers converted into numbers and will be generating the result in in a number format altogether. Let's take another example altogether. Let's see how do we convert this numeric conversion altogether. I'll say like some str is equal to 1 2 3. I simply say console.log type of str. If I try to give it, the output I'll get is something known as string, because here str is storing something, a string data type. So whatever quotations, whatever data inside the quotations, we don't care about it. If it is of simple string in quotations, then it is considered as string. Similarly, if I say let updated str would be something like number of str, I'll say console.log updated str. Instead of updated str, I'll say type of. Now in this scenario specifically, if you look at it here, as we did first this string conversion, we are also trying to convert this string into a number. So here the output would be simply number. So here we have number. Similarly, we have seen this string function. Similarly, we have this number function where it helps us to convert this respect to things to numbers altogether. So if I rerun the code, you'll see initial for this first console log, we have this result as string. For the second console log, we have the result as number, because in between we have converted this string to number. That's what we have did here. Now coming back to this, another important thing. When does this number conversion works? If your string consists only numbers, if you can clearly remember, here we have 1, 2, 3 inside double quotations, then only number conversion is possible. Then only this string formatted 1, 2, 3 will be converted into 123 number. If you have something like 123a, then here the console log will be string. But whenever we try to do something here, like converting this some string to number, you get the result as not a number, because 1 is a string. So, sorry, 1 is a number will be converting this 1. 2 is a number will convert it to a number. 3 is a number will be converted into a number. But coming to the character a is not a number. So this number function or this constructor will fail to convert this last character a. Then you'll get the result as nan. So here the output will also change. Let's rerun the code. I can clearly see one very important thing. Okay, I think this autosave has been clicked. Okay, I think the autosave hasn't been properly implemented. I think, yeah. So coming back to this thing, here we get the output as number, because nan is a special type of number. That's why you still see the code. You see this first console log is string, then second console is number. But if you try to check the values, console.log of updated string, like what exactly is stored inside this respective variable. Now you can clearly see there is something known as nan. In the third console log, because first console log will give string, second console log will store something known as nan. That's what we have this thing known as a nan. But if the variable is storing something known as nan, if the variable is something is storing as nan, then the type of that variable is also number. The type of this variable is also, because nan itself is a special numeric value. Special numeric value. This is how this numeric conversions actually work. And I have this table. Let me grab this table for you. I have noted this table somewhere else. Moment. Sorry. Okay. So let's say if you have something like boolean, let's say bool, let's have boolean, and if you mention something like true, if you ever want to convert this boolean to number, I'll say let updated bool is equal to number of. Now you will console.log updated bool, and what is the type of this updated bool? If I run the code, right, I can clearly see whenever we have a boolean as true, if you want to convert this true to number, the result will be 1. The result will be 1, and the type is also number. But whenever we have bool as false, when you try to convert this boolean value to number, let's see what happens. The output is 0. The output is 0. Output is 0. If you have something like some random is equal to null, random, updated random, instead of, let me change these things. Updated random. So now whenever we have something like null, and if you want to convert that to number, let's see what will be the result. I can clearly see whenever you have null, and if you want to convert that thing to number, this conversion will result the value to be 0. So these are the basic ways of we actually converting these things. Even a few people mention it like this. Let's say we have so many spaces, we have 1, 2, 3, and we have so many spaces. Now what will be the output? The conversion will be simple 1, 2, 3, simple number 1, 2, 3. So this number conversions will eliminate all these unnecessary spaces, altogether. Even if you run the code, you'll see the string 1, 2, 3 is now being converted into normal 1, 2, 3, and the type of is number. That's how this entire numeric conversions actually work. Now come to this respective thing known as a Boolean conversion. Let me say it like this: Boolean conversions. What does this respect to Boolean conversion actually meant? So if I say console.log, we have this function like Boolean. As we have this thing, let's say I have a number 1. If I want to convert this into Boolean, I'll get the result as true. If I have a number 0, and if I want to convert something into Boolean, if I run the code, I'll get as false. If I have something data known as null, and if I want to convert this null data into Boolean type, I'll get something known as false. If I have something known as empty strings like this, just an empty string, nothing data in between. If I want to convert that empty string into Boolean, you'll still get the value as false. But if you have some space, some one single space between these quotes, and if I want to convert that thing into a string, you'll still get true. You might be asking, Nitin, but still this is empty. You don't have anything. So one very important thing we need to understand is even space, I can say even empty space is considered as truth value by Boolean operations. Boolean operations. So that's how even when you want to convert a string which has some empty spaces in it, let's say if it has empty spaces like this, even if you try to convert this entire empty spaces string into Boolean using this Boolean function or constructor altogether, you'll still get the value of true. Similarly, if you want some data, if you have some data like 1, 2, 3, some random data, still you'll get the value as true. So if you want to convert a given particular data into string, we can convert using this string constructor. So what is meant by constructor? I'll come to that point when we are discussing about objects. Similarly, I have some string. If I want to convert that thing to a number, I have this constructor known as number. Similarly, if I want to convert something to Boolean, I have this constructor known as Boolean. Instead of that, give whatever values you want. If you say, Nitin, this is bit awkward, I'll take off this entire value. I'll keep them in one basic variable and I'll paste it here. Now I'll convert the data that is present inside this basic variable using this thing. I think this is a bit appropriate. I mean, this is a bit clearer compared to the previous one, but I think you got the grasp on how does this entire things actually work. Now, let me do this one thing. Does the thing. So now let's go ahead and understand the third part of this respective video where we are trying to understand the basic operators, the math part, a basic part on how does this entire thing actually work and all such sort of things. Yes, let's go ahead. Let me comment it down. So I'll say one very important basic operators. It's pretty straightforward and it's very easy. Basic operators like based upon math. It's all about math. So from school, we have learned about addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all of these basic things that we are going to implement in it. But one important thing I just want to revisit the math thing that we already know is nothing but knowing the definitions about unary, binary, operand. Okay. We need to understand what is meant by this respective thing known as an operand and operator. So coming back to this thing known as an operator, what is meant by an operator? Operators are nothing but addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and finding the remainder, which is the percentage symbol. And also we have this exponentiation, which is known as double star. So these are operators. Using these, we perform operations. That is what meant by operator. What is meant by operand? On which we use the operators are operands. For example, let's say 1 plus 2. So for the operator plus, we have two operands. Similarly, if I want to say 2 multiplied by 2. So here we have the operator as 2 multiplied by 3, for example. Here we have the operator as multiplication symbol and the operands are 2 and 3. So operand is nothing but on which we are going to use our operators. So we have this list of operators like this, on which we are going to use all of these operators. Those are operands. These are the two primary definitions. And coming back to this thing, what is meant by this binary operator, unary operator? You can say yes, unary operator and binary operator. What is meant by definitions of unary operator and binary operator? If the operand only has one operand, then it is unary operator. If the operand only has, or if the operand has more than one operator, or I can say has two operands, sorry, operator, operator. If the operator has two operands, then it is binary. For example, if we want me to make it clear, the examples of unary operator would be +2, -2, sorry, -2. We cannot have this multiplication 2 and division 2 like this. It is not possible. It is not possible. Because always remember, multiplication, division, and this percentage symbol, which is known as modulo, where it helps us to find the reminders. These three are binary operators. So examples of binary operators would be 2 multiplied by 3, 4 divided by 2, 4, 6 modulus of 3. So here multiplication, division, and modulo, this percentage symbol, requires two operands. Those are known as binary operator. So this operator, in order to work, it requires two operands. 2 and 3 here, 4 and 2 here, 6 and 3 here. So the operator requires two operands. Then those are known as binary operator. If an operator require only single operand, like +2, -2, or if I have this thing known as these things. These are known as unary operator. So here the plus is unary operator, here the minus is unary operator. Similarly here, in 2 multiplied by 3, this multiplication symbol is binary operator, this division symbol is binary operator, this percentage symbol is binary operator. This is how we define this unary operator, binary operator, operand, and different things altogether. Right? Now let's go ahead and let's try to understand and implement what are the different things that are present. So you already know how does addition, subtraction, multiplication, division actually works. Now let's try to understand two important things. One is a remainder. So remainder is nothing but this modulo symbol. What is meant by this respect to remainder? By something known as console.log 4 modulo of 2. So when we divide 4 with 2, what will be the remainder? The remainder will be 0. Remainder will be 0. So if I run the code, you'll see the value as, or rerun the code, you'll see the value as 0. Similarly, if I have this 10 and if I have something known as 5, if I divide 10 with 5, what is the remainder? It is still be the 0. It is still be the 0. Similarly, if I divide 3 with 2, what will be the remainder? It would be 1. It would be 1. So it is not here, it would be 1. That would be the result. So in order to find remainder, we use modulo. But one very important thing we need to understand is, if I say 4 divided by 2, 4 divided. So when we are using division, we'll get something else. When we are using this respective thing known as modulo, we'll get remainder. So division gives us some different result, modulo gives us some different result altogether. This is how the remainder thing actually works. Coming back to this thing known as an exponentiation. So if I want something known as 2 square, I'll simply mention 2 multiplied by 2. 2 square. This is also 2 square. But if I want 2 power 10, how can I go it? So for that, I'll simply mention like this, 2 power 10. If I use double star in JavaScript notation, it represents 2 power. 2 power 10. 2 power 10 would be 1024. Run the code. You'll see the value as 1024. Okay, keep this thing as separate. I can clearly see if I have 2 power 10, the value is 1024. If I have 2 power 0, you already know it would be the value of 1. If I have 2 power 1, the value would be 2. So this is how the exponentiation operator will be working specifically for us. So similarly, this exponentiation, let's say if you want to have some kind of a square root, you can mention it like this. 4 power 1 divided by 2. So it is nothing but we are having square root of 4. We are having square root of 4. We can keep this as square root of 4. So as we already know, square root of 4 is 2. Similarly, if we have something known as 36, square root of 36 would be represented like this. So if I run the code, you'll see the value as 6. This is how this entire exponentiation actually work. Now coming back to this another part, we have something known as string concatenation. String concatenation, which is nothing but if we have two different strings or two strings and we want to combine them as single string, then we follow this thing known as string concatenation. So what does this string concatenation would look like? For example, let me say that str is equal to something known as, okay, that str1 is equal to something known as hi. And I have another thing known as good morning. I have two different strings. Assume two different strings. Now, if I want to combine both the strings together, I'll simply say console.log str1 plus str2. So one very important thing we need to understand is while performing string concatenation, as we have clearly seen, that plus operator can be unary operator and also be binary operator. And one other observation that I want to mention is press operator. If both the operands are, I can say, numbers. If both the operands are actually numbers, right? If both the operands are actually numbers, then it will perform addition. If plus operator or if both the operands are strings, then it will perform string concatenation. So now the output, let's clearly observe how does, because here str1 is a string, str2 is a string, and here both the operands for this plus operator, str1 and str2 are strings. Let's see how it works. I can clearly see both the things are now combined. You can clearly see hi, good morning is one single statement here, one single collection of strings. That's how this string concatenation actually work. Now comes to this another important thing, because here we covered two cases. For plus operator, if both operands are numbers, it will do addition. If both operands are string, it will perform string concatenation. If one operand is string and other is something known as other is number, what will happen? Which is nothing but, for example, here I'll say let something like this. Let num1 is equal to 1. And if I'll say let num2 is equal to 2. Now in this case, if I have this thing known as an console.log num1 plus num2. Let me comment it. Right, num2. Now in this case, the variable that this is storing is string. The variable that here the data is storing is number. Now in this case, what exactly happens? Let's run the code and let's understand how this happens. Now if you can clearly observe, when either of the operand is string and other is number, or let me write it like this. If either of the operand is string and other is number, then what is this? Press operator will convert the number to string and then perform string concatenation. If you can clearly observe, one is a string, two is a number. Now, when we have these combinations, here the press operator is converting our number 2 into string. This would be converted to like this. So let me write it like this. So here we have something known as 1 plus 2. Let me write it in the comment. Now here our number 2 is now being converted into string. Two. Now as if a addition operator have two operands, it will actually perform one single element, one single thing. If it has two operands as strings, we already seen that if both the operands are strings, then it will perform string concatenation. So you'll get the output as 12. You'll get the output as 12. If you have any kind of a doubt, let me do this one thing. I'll instead say let result is equal to this. I'll say type of node. You'll see this is string. So when we combine this thing, let me have this comment here. Instead of this result. So here this entire concatenation happens like this. It now result variable will store 12 as a string, not a number, because we have this one single rule. Due to which we have our respective type conversion actually happened in this format altogether. Similarly, in some examples, people try to confuse you a bit. Let's add this thing. Let me take this example. This is a good example. Instead of num3, num4, let's say we have something like 3, something like 4, something like different variable names. Now comes to the point. I'll have something like let num5 is equal to 5. If I try to add this thing, number 5. Now this would look like this. It would be 3 plus 4 plus 5. What would be the result? Will this result be the value of 39, or it will be the result of 349? Will be the result of this or this? Will be the result of this or this? Let's check it out the code. Right. Okay, so I'm getting the type. Instead of type, remove the type. Let's console. It's not required. Let's focus on this one single example. Let's try to understand what exactly is being stored inside this variable known as this. So note it. I can clearly see the value. Okay, the result to. I think the result is having this thing. Okay. Sorry. I haven't changed these values. 3, 4. Sorry. Now again run the code, rerun. Let's rerun the code. I can clearly see the value is, sorry, it's 345. Yeah. The value is 345, not 39. Not 39. So you might be getting a small doubt that here we have 3 as a string, 4 and 5 as numbers. Why don't this 4 and 5 will be added first and then will be converted into a string? Why don't 39 will be the result? Why can't 39 will be the result? Why we have 349, 345 as a result is because it is very straightforward, because as if you can clearly observe, the execution happens from left to right. The execution happens from left to right. So in this case, first we have addition between these two numbers. Sorry, these two elements. First one is string and second one is number. So as we already know, if you have string and a number, this addition operator will try to convert this number into string and then we'll add it. So to break this down, it will happen in this format. So it has 3, 4 happens first and then 5. So this 4 will be converted to a string and string concatenation happens. It would be 340, 34. Same thing happens here. This 5 number will be converted to the string and string concatenation. That's why we have the result as 345. That's why we have this respective result as 345. Right? Similarly, this is an interview question people tend to ask more in the spot of interviews, because we need to understand how these things are placed. Now let me create another variable known as let result 3 is equal to, I'll say num4 plus num5 plus num3. Or if I say, let me add it in a reverse format. Right. So I'll console.log result 3. Now here this looks like this. Here number 5 is 5 plus number 4 is 4 plus this value is 3. Now what will be the result? Will it be something known as 93? Or will it be something known as 543? Which one the result would be? Take a pause and guess the answer. Now let's go back and understand how this thing actually works. So for that, let's run the code. Okay, first let's console. Right. Now can you see the output that we got for this console log is 93. So as we have clearly seen that the execution happens from left to right. We go from left till the right point. That's what we go and we do the things. So first 5 and 5 plus 4 will be actually happening the thing. 5 plus 4 is 9. So then 9 plus this string. Then obviously string concatenation happens. So this will get the result as 93 altogether. So these are basic interview questions. I want you to do this one thing. And one very important thing, whatever rules that I have taught specifically for this string concatenation part will be applicable only with the binary plus. Similarly, if someone says this format, console.log 6 minus 2. So what exactly now happens? If I run the code, you'll see it is of 4. Where here we have binary negative symbol, binary subtraction, and you can clearly observe string converted to number. If you can, let me clear it out. Yes. So here this 2 is now converted to number and numerical operation had happened. The same thing happens with the division also. If I have division, it would be the same thing. Even or division. Let me do it right. You can see when you have binary minus or division, string will be converted to number. So you have to be very careful. You don't assume that with plus I am doing all of these things. With binary addition, we am doing all of these things. With this binary subtraction and binary division, you also assume don't assume that thing will happen. If I have multiplication thing, let's see what happens. you'll see still it is having converted to number. Or let me mention this thing. So even binary plus this binary plus, if either of the operands is string, it will convert the other number to string and will have string concatenation. But coming back to this other binary operands, it doesn't. It's not the case. It's not the case. That's what I want to mention. Let me do it. Give me a minute. So till this point, we have seen the respective type conversions, and still we have a lot of type conversions that we want to check out. We see the type conversions from the in the next session altogether. So that's it for this session. Thank you all and all the best.